I almost read straight past the smallest thing in this one. Not the garden, not the light, not the figure at the stream. A number. 18 minutes. That is how long Shmuel Adler says his heart was stopped before he came back. I am Zeke, and I spend most of my time reading the accounts people send in to near-death experiences. And I will be honest with you at the start. I do not know what to do with 18 minutes. I have read enough of these to know the difference between what I can explain and what I cannot. And this one sits in the second pile. He is 62, a rabbi in Jerusalem, a man who gave his whole life to the scrolls. And the thing he keeps coming back to is not the hospital or the doctors. It is that he says he was more awake in those 18 minutes than in 62 years. Let me get out of the way and let him tell it the way he told it. He says it better than I could. I am going to share something with you that will change the way you perceive the very air you breathe. My name is Shmuel Adler. I am 62 years old, and 9 days ago I left this world for 18 minutes. During that time, the Messiah, Yeshua himself, stood before me and pulled back the curtain on the spiritual reality of our world. When you hear what he revealed, you will never look at the streets of Jerusalem or the faces of your neighbors the same way again. I have spent my life as a rabbi here in the Holy City, buried in the scrolls and the traditions of our fathers. But before I tell you what I saw, please share where you are hearing this from. In these heavy times, it helps to feel the connection of the human spirit. I invite you to like this and share your thoughts. Let us speak plainly and with open hearts so we can find the truth together. On that morning, I was walking through the Jewish quarter toward the Western Wall. The sun was hitting the ancient stones just right. Suddenly, there was a terrible sound of metal snapping. Scaffolding from a nearby restoration project gave way, and a massive block of limestone struck me. The doctors later said I was gone before I hit the ground. For 18 minutes, my pulse was a memory, but I was more alive in those minutes than I have been in all my 6 decades on this earth. There is one line I want to sit with for a moment. He says the doctors told him he was gone before he hit the ground, and then in the same breath that he was more alive than he had ever been. I keep noticing that in these accounts, the moment of dying and the moment of feeling most awake are not one after the other. They are the same moment. Shmuel does not lead up to it. He sets the two things down side by side, a falling stone and a full breath, and walks on as if they belong together. To me, they do not belong together. That is probably why I cannot leave it alone. When the darkness of the accident broke, it did not shatter into pieces. It dissolved like salt in water. I found myself standing in a place where the light did not come from a sun or a lamp. The light seemed to come from the ground itself, from the flowers, and from the very air. I was standing in a garden that was so lush and vibrant that the gardens I knew in Jerusalem felt like gray dust in comparison. The grass beneath my feet felt like silk, and every breath I took was filled with the scent of cedar, honey, and a freshness I cannot describe. It was as if I was breathing for the first time in my life. I looked down at my hands and saw that the age spots and the trembling I had lived with for years were gone. I felt a strength in my bones that I hadn't felt since I was a young boy running through the hills of Galilee. I began to walk, guided by a peace that was so thick it felt like a physical weight on my shoulders. I wasn't confused. I didn't wonder where I was. My spirit knew this place better than my body knew my own home. After walking for what felt like moments, yet also felt like an eternity, I saw a figure standing by a stream of water that flowed with a sound like music. He was wearing a simple robe, the kind a common man might wear, but the majesty he carried was beyond any king I could imagine. As I approached, the air seemed to vibrate with his presence. When I saw his face, my knees gave way. I didn't fall out of fear. I fell out of an overwhelming sense of recognition. He looked at me with eyes that were deep and clear, filled with a knowledge that spanned the beginning of time to the end of all things. I have spent 62 years studying the Torah, looking for the face of the one our people have longed for. And there he was. He was not a distant judge or a cold deity. He was the very heartbeat of Israel. He reached down and took my hand, lifting me to my feet. His touch sent a wave of warmth through me that reached into the deepest corners of my soul, healing wounds I didn't even know I had. Shmuel, he said, and his voice was like the sound of many waters, yet it was as gentle as a father's whisper to a sleeping child. You have spent your life studying the letters of the law. Now you shall see the Spirit that wrote them. He didn't rebuke me for my doubts or my years of searching in the shadows. He simply loved me. I stood there, a rabbi from Jerusalem, feeling like a small child who had finally found his way home. I looked at him and could only whisper, "You are the one we have been waiting for. You are the light." He smiled, and in that smile, I saw the joy of 1,000 celebrations. I have always been here, Shmuel. I have walked with you in the scrolls, and I have walked with you in the streets of the city. But now the veil is thin, and the time for hidden things to remain hidden is over. He gestured toward the stream, and as I looked into the water, it didn't reflect my face. It began to show me images of the world as it is right now. Look, he said. The world is in a great struggle, but they do not understand what they are fighting. They fight over land, over power, and over names. But I am looking at the heart. Come, I have much to show you, because you must return and tell them that the clock has moved and the hour is later than they think. He began to walk, and I followed him. As we moved through the garden, the trees themselves seemed to bow as he passed. He stopped before a massive tree whose leaves were like silver. He touched one of the leaves, and it expanded until it became like a great window into the physical world. I saw the nations of the earth. They looked like a field of wheat that was being shaken by a violent wind. The wind you see is the breath of truth, Yeshua told me. In these days, I am sending a spirit of revealing across the whole earth. There is no wall thick enough and no basement deep enough to hide what is in the heart of man anymore. Look at the leaders, Shmuel. I watched as the window showed halls of power in great cities. I saw men and women in fine clothes speaking to crowds. But as the wind of truth blew over them, their skin seemed to become transparent. I could see their thoughts like black ink swirling in their chests. Some were filled with greed, others with a hunger for control that made them look like monsters. The masks are falling, he said. In this coming season, those who have built their houses on lies will watch them crumble. It does not matter how many scrolls they have memorized or how many prayers they say in public. If the heart is not mine, the wind will carry them away. The vision shifted, and I saw people in small villages, in dark rooms, and in places of great suffering. As the wind blew over them, they didn't crumble. Instead, they began to glow. I saw a woman in a distant land sharing her last bit of bread with a neighbor, and she shone like a star. I saw a man in a prison cell praying for his enemies, and the light from his spirit was so bright it blinded me. These are the ones who are ready, the Messiah whispered. They have nothing in this world, so they have everything in me. The great sifting is not about who is rich or who is religious. It is about who is real. I felt a deep sorrow for my city as the vision moved toward the hills of Jerusalem. He saw my thoughts. Do not weep for the stones, Shmuel. Weep for the people who have forgotten that the stones are only there to point to me. He waved his hand, and the vision changed again. I saw the year 1948. But it wasn't the history I had learned in books. He pointed to the month of September in that year. In September of 1948, he said, a physical branch was grafted back into the tree. My people were gathered from the corners of the earth, not by the hands of men, but by my hand. It was a sign to the nations that I do not forget my promises. But the physical return was only the beginning of the labor. Now we are in the time of the spiritual return. I am calling to the remnant, not those who follow me out of habit, but those who follow me out of hunger. He showed me a vision of the streets of Jerusalem as they were just a few days ago. I saw a golden thread, like a line of fire weaving through the crowds. It didn't follow the borders of neighborhoods. It touched a young soldier on a bus, an old woman selling fruit, and even a child playing in a park. This thread is the connection of the Spirit, he explained. I am weaving together a people who will stand when the world falls apart. They are being sealed in their foreheads with the mark of the Lamb. They will not be moved by the threats of the enemy or the collapse of the systems of men. They belong to a kingdom that cannot be shaken. The golden thread is where I slowed down. This is not the first account I have read where someone describes a thread or a cord tying them to something they are afraid of being cut off from. Usually one person, one line. What is different here is that Shmuel's thread runs between strangers. A soldier on a bus, a woman selling fruit, a child in a park, people who never met, stitched into the same net. I cannot tell you what that means. I can only tell you it is the first time I have watched that detail point outward at a whole city instead of inward at one life. That turn is what stayed with me. As I watched, I saw the golden threads beginning to pull together, forming a net that covered the entire land. The time of the gathering is here, but it is a gathering of the soul, he continued. People look for a building of stone to be raised, but I am building a temple of living stones. Every heart that turns to me in truth becomes a part of this house. The old ways of seeking me through dry rituals are being burned away by the fire of my presence. Tell them, Shmuel, that I am not interested in their ceremonies if their hearts are far from me. I want the heart. I want the whole heart. We walked further into the garden, and the air began to feel different. It grew quiet, a silence so profound it was as if the entire universe had held its breath. The Messiah stopped and looked toward the horizon of the vision. I saw the entire world, all the busy cities and the noisy markets, suddenly go still. The cars stopped, the televisions went dark, and the shouting voices fell silent. A season of stillness is coming, he said, and his face was grave. I will allow the noise of the world to be hushed. Man has become so loud that he can no longer hear the voice of his creator. He has built a tower of sound to drown out the conviction of his own spirit. But I will bring a hush over the earth. In that silence, every person will be left with nothing but their own thoughts and my voice. To some, this silence will be a terror, for they have never met themselves in the dark. But to those who love me, it will be the most beautiful music they have ever heard. I saw people sitting in their homes, looking at their hands, wondering why the world had stopped. I saw some people screaming at the sky, trying to bring the noise back. But the silence remained. This is the time of the great decision, he whispered. In the stillness, they will have to choose. Will they run back to the noise of the world, or will they turn their faces toward the light? I am giving every soul a chance to hear me one last time before the great transition. I felt the weight of his words in my marrow. As a rabbi, I had always thought we would have more time, that the coming of the Messiah would be a slow process of education and growth. But he was showing me something sudden and overwhelming. The world thinks it is progressing, he said, reading my heart again, but it is only running faster toward a cliff. I am the only bridge. I am the only way across. The Messiah turned away from the vision of the silent world and began to walk deeper into the garden, toward a valley that seemed to be filled with a soft, glowing mist. I followed close behind him, my heart pounding with a mixture of awe and a strange, holy curiosity. Every step I took felt like I was shedding years of heavy tradition and finding the simple truth that the tradition was meant to protect. We reached the edge of the mist, and as he stepped into it, the air cleared. Before us stood a massive structure that looked like it was made of woven light. It was a hall of immense proportions, and inside I saw millions of vessels of every shape and size. Some were made of gold, some of silver, many of simple clay. But as I looked closer, I saw that every single vessel was cracked or shattered. This is the state of the human soul, Yeshua said, his voice echoing with a deep, resonant compassion. He walked to a small, broken clay jar and touched the jagged edges. As he did, a light poured from his fingers, and the cracks began to fuse together. The jar didn't just become whole, it became more beautiful, with the scars of the breaks now glowing like veins of gold. The world teaches that once something is broken, it is useless, he told me. But in my kingdom, the breaking is often the beginning. I am showing you this because in the days ahead, the pressure of the world will break many people. They will feel that they are beyond repair. You must tell them that I am the master potter. I do not throw away the pieces. I gather them. I want them to know that their brokenness is where my light shines the brightest. This is the vision of the mended heart. In the coming year, there will be a great movement of healing. People who have carried trauma for decades, those who have been crushed by the weight of their own mistakes, will find that when they bring the pieces to me, I make something entirely new. Here is something I honestly cannot settle, and maybe you can help me with it. Shmuel hands all of this to us in a clean order. The masks falling, then the stillness, then the broken jar filled back with gold. It is tidy, almost too tidy for 18 minutes. So my real question, if you have ever been somewhere like this yourself, is whether it came to you in an order at all. Or did your mind line the pieces up afterward, once you were back and trying to make it tellable? I'm not trying to catch anyone out. I cannot tell where the experience stops and the remembering starts, and I would genuinely like to know. He then showed me a vision of families. I saw homes where parents and children were separated by walls of silence and anger. I saw generations that had passed down bitterness like a dark inheritance. Then I saw the golden thread I had seen earlier begin to weave through these homes. It wasn't a sudden fix, but a slow, persistent softening. I saw an old man, much like myself, sitting across from a son he hadn't spoken to in years. The wind of truth blew through the room, and the pride that had held them apart began to melt away. The restoration of the family is central to what I am doing, he explained. The enemy has tried to tear the fabric of the home because the home is where the image of the father is first seen. I am turning the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. This is not a political program or a social change. It is a miracle of the Spirit. You will see reconciliations that defy logic. You will see love return to places that have been cold for 40 years. We moved from the Hall of Vessels to a high ridge that overlooked a vast, dark plain. In the distance, I could see flickering lights, like tiny candles in a massive cavern. "Look at the lamps, Shmuel," he said. I watched as some of the lights burned brightly while others flickered and went out. Beside each light stood a person, some frantically trying to shield their flame from a rising wind, while others stood calmly, their lamps glowing with an internal strength. "This is the vision of the wise and the foolish," Yeshua said. "The wind that is coming will test every lamp. Many have relied on the oil of their parents or the oil of their pastors and rabbis. They have lived on borrowed light, but the hour has come where every person must have their own supply of oil. This oil is found only in the secret place, in the quiet hours of seeking my face. I am warning my people now, do not wait until the darkness is complete to look for oil. Build your relationship with me now. Learn to hear my voice in the small things so that when the great storm comes, your light will not fail." I saw a young man in the vision who had no lamp at all, but as he cried out in the darkness, a figure appeared beside him, a believer who shared their light. The flame didn't divide, it multiplied. "The light is not meant to be hidden under a bowl," the Messiah said. "In the coming days, the darkness will be so thick that even the smallest flame will be seen for miles. My people will become lighthouses. They will not need to shout to be heard. Their very presence will pull people out of the shadows." The vision shifted again, and we were standing on the shores of a great sea. The water was tossing and turning, reflecting a sky that was filled with shifting colors. "This is the sea of the nations," he said. "The turmoil you see is the shaking of everything that can be shaken. Governments will tremble, economies will falter, and the things people have trusted in for security will prove to be sand." I saw massive ships on the water, representing the great powers of the world, beginning to lean and take on water. But in the midst of the storm, I saw small, humble boats that remained perfectly steady. "The humble boats are those who have anchored themselves in the heavens," he told me. "They do not look to the news for their peace. They do not look to their bank accounts for their joy. They look to me. I am showing you this so you can tell people not to be afraid when they see the world in upheaval. It is necessary for the old systems to fail so that the new kingdom can be seen. The shaking is not meant to destroy my people, but to set them free from their dependence on the world." Then Yeshua showed me something that touched my rabbi's heart deeply. He showed me the ancient wells of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the vision, these wells had been filled with dirt and stones by the enemies of the Spirit. They were dry and forgotten. But then I saw a group of young people from all over the world coming to these wells with shovels and songs. They began to dig. They pulled out the stones of legalism, the dirt of tradition without power, and the debris of centuries of misunderstanding. Suddenly, water began to geyser up from the ground. It wasn't just water, it was life. It was the ancient power of the prophets and the patriarchs, but it was being poured out on a new generation. The wells are being unstopped, he said with a smile that lit up the entire horizon. The same spirit that spoke to Moses in the bush and led the children through the sea is being released again. But this time, it is not for a few leaders, it is for all who thirst. You will see young men and women walking in an authority that will stun the elders. They will speak my words with a fire that cannot be quenched. The ancient paths and the new move of the Spirit are meeting. This is the harmony of the kingdom. One picture in here keeps coming back to me, and it is a quiet one. Not the storm, not the heaving sea, the old wells. Shmuel says the wells his fathers dug had been packed with dirt and stones and forgotten, and that it was young people who showed up with shovels to clear them. Notice he does not have them digging new wells. They are uncovering old ones. For a man who spent 62 years guarding the old traditions, that is a strange thing to be shown, that what was being restored had been there the whole time, just buried. He lets it pass without a word. I cannot. We walked further, and I saw a mountain that seemed to reach into the very throne room of God. At the base of the mountain, there were thousands of people, all of them carrying heavy sacks on their backs. They were trying to climb the mountain, but the weight was pulling them down, making them stumble and fall. These are the ones who try to reach me through their own effort, Yeshua said sadly. They carry the weight of their own righteousness, their own good works, and their own pride. They think that if they just work harder, they will reach the top. He then pointed to a few people who were standing at the bottom, looking up at the mountain. They weren't carrying sacks. Instead, they were holding out their empty hands. As I watched, the wind of the Spirit caught them and lifted them up the mountain with no effort at all. This is the vision of the exchange, he explained. Tell them to drop the sacks. My grace is the wind that carries the soul to the heights. You cannot earn a place in my presence. You can only receive it. The more they try to do it themselves, the heavier they will become. But when they become empty, I can fill them. This is a hard lesson for the religious mind, Shmuel. They love their sacks because it makes them feel important. But on this mountain, only the empty-handed can fly. I felt a sting of conviction, remembering all the times I had prided myself on my knowledge and my standing in the community. I realized that my rabbi's robes were just another sack I had been carrying. Yeshua looked at me with such kindness that the shame vanished instantly. You are learning, Shmuel. That is why you are here. He then showed me a vision of the cities of refuge. I saw places of peace and light springing up in the middle of chaotic cities. These were not physical buildings with locks and keys, but communities of believers who had created an atmosphere of heaven on earth. I saw people fleeing from the darkness of the world, running toward these places. When they entered, the fear left them, the sickness left them, the confusion vanished. I am preparing places of protection for the coming days, he said. When the world becomes a desert of hate and suspicion, my people will be oases of love and trust. These communities will be so different from the world that people will be drawn to them like moths to a flame. They will see a people who do not hate their enemies, who do not hoard their food, and who do not fear the future. This will be the greatest testimony of the gospel, not the word spoken, but the life lived together. Tell my people to stop building walls against each other and start building bridges. The unity of the Spirit is the only shield that will hold. As he spoke, I saw a great table being set in the middle of the garden. It stretched out as far as the eye could see. It was covered in the finest fruits, breads, and wines. This is the hospitality of the kingdom, he said. I am calling the world to a feast, but so many are too busy with their chores to come. In the coming year, I will send out a final invitation. It will go to the streets, to the alleys, and to the hidden places. I want my house to be full. Tell them that the master is waiting. Tell them that the table is ready and there is a seat with their name on it. They do not need to clean themselves up to come. The feast itself will wash them clean. I saw people from every nation, every skin color, and every background sitting down together at this table. There was no more Jew or Gentile, slave or free, rich or poor. There was only the family. The joy at that table was so infectious that I found myself laughing without knowing why. This is the end of the story, Shmuel. This is where everything is heading. All the pain, all the wars, and all the waiting, they all lead to this table. The laughter at the table seemed to vibrate through my very bones, but as I looked at Yeshua, his face grew solemn once more, though the love in his eyes never dimmed. He reached into the air and seemed to pull a scroll out of the light itself. It wasn't like the heavy parchment scrolls I spent my days unrolling in the synagogue. This was a scroll of living fire. As it unfurled, I saw names, thousands upon thousands of names, written in a script that seemed to dance. "This is the vision of the remembrance," he said. I watched as some names on the scroll burned with a steady, brilliant light, while others were dim, almost fading into the background. People believe that their worth is measured by the monuments they build or the titles they carry among men. But here, in the reality of the Spirit, a name shines based on the secret movements of the heart toward me. I am showing you this because the hour has come for a great awakening of the conscience. In the coming season, I'm going to remind people of who they truly are. Those who have forgotten their first love will feel a burning in their chests that they cannot explain. Those who have hidden their light behind fear will find that fear melting away. I saw a name on the scroll that I recognized, a man in my own neighborhood who was known for his harsh temper and his lack of faith. To my shock, his name was glowing with a soft, persistent violet light. "Why does he shine?" I asked. Yeshua showed me a vision of this man, late at night, weeping in his kitchen as he prayed for a neighbor's sick child. No one saw him, no one knew, but the Messiah saw. "Every act of hidden mercy is a jewel in the crown of the world," he said. The world is about to see a reversal of what it considers important. The famous will be forgotten, and the forgotten will be made famous in the courts of heaven. Tell them to stop seeking the applause of men, for that breath is gone in a moment. Seek the smile of the Father, which lasts for eternity. Something a viewer wrote a while back came straight back to me here. After a different story, someone said the part that stayed with them was not the light or the tunnel. It was being shown a private moment of their own that no one else had ever seen. I remember it because it had not occurred to me before. And here it is again. Shmuel is shown a short-tempered neighbor weeping alone in his kitchen at night, praying for a sick child, and that hidden moment is the thing that makes the man's name glow. No audience, no credit. I do not know why that kind of unseen moment keeps surfacing in these accounts, but it does, more than the grand parts. We walked toward a massive, ancient gate that looked as though it were made of a single giant pearl. As we passed through it, the garden opened up into a city that was not made of stone or wood, but of pure, transparent gold. It was Jerusalem, but a version of Jerusalem that has never known a tear or a drop of blood. The light here was so intense that I had to shield my spirit, yet it felt like a homecoming. "This is the vision of the new day," Yeshua whispered. I saw a river of crystal water flowing through the center of the city, and on its banks, people were talking and laughing, but they weren't speaking Hebrew, English, or any language I recognized. Yet I understood every word perfectly. It was the language of the Spirit. "The confusion of the world is ending," he said. "Man has used his tongue to build towers of pride and walls of division, but I am restoring a pure speech to my people. In the coming times, you will see those who love me begin to understand one another across every barrier of culture and tradition. The unity of the Spirit is not something you create, it is something you enter into when you lay down your own glory." He stopped by the river and knelt down, scooping up a handful of the water. He poured it over my feet, and I felt a surge of life that made me feel as though I could leap over mountains. The earth is thirsty, Shmuel. The systems of man have become dry and brittle. They are like old wineskins that cannot hold the new wine I am pouring out. Do not try to fix the old systems. Do not waste your strength trying to prop up what is falling. Instead, point them to the river. Point them to the life that flows from my throne. Those who drink of this water will never thirst again, and even in the midst of the great heat that is coming upon the earth, they will remain green and fruitful. As we stood there, I felt a sudden, sharp pang of sorrow. I knew our time was coming to an end. The beauty of this place was so great that the thought of going back to the heavy, dusty world felt like a sentence of exile. Yeshua looked at me with a knowing smile. You must go back, Shmuel. Your work is not finished. You are to be a witness of what you have seen. You are to tell them that the king is not a theory and the kingdom is not a dream. It is the only reality that remains when everything else is stripped away. He placed his hand over my heart, and I felt a warmth that was almost too much to bear. Carry this fire with you. When you speak, it will not be your words, but mine. When you look at the broken, you will see them through my eyes. Tell my people that the night is far spent, but the day is at hand. Do not be afraid of the shadows that are lengthening across the world, for they only prove that the light is getting closer. Suddenly, the golden city began to blur. The sound of the music like water turned into the steady, mechanical beep of a heart monitor. The sweet cedar air turned into the sharp smell of antiseptic and medicine. I felt a crushing weight return to my chest, the physical reality of my broken ribs and the trauma of the accident. I gasped, my lungs burning as they took in the heavy air of the hospital room. The doctors and nurses jumped back in shock. I later learned that they had been preparing to call the time of death. They had tried everything, and for 18 minutes I had been a corpse on a table. One of the young doctors, a man who had seen many things but never this, was pale as a ghost. He kept shaking his head, looking at the monitor that was now showing a strong, steady rhythm. He said it was medically impossible for a man of my age to have no brain damage, no organ failure after being gone for so long. This is where the story turns for me. Up to now, he is in the garden, at the river, at the table, and then, in a single line, it is a heart monitor and the smell of antiseptic and a young doctor going pale. What catches me off guard is not that he comes back. It is how little relief there is in it. You would expect waking up to be the good part. Shmuel describes it more like being sent into exile, back into a heavy, dusty world. The whole thing flips right here. The dying was the homecoming, and the living is the hard part. I was not ready for it to land that way, but I knew. I had been in the presence of the one who holds the keys to death and life. I spent the next few days in a daze, the vision still playing behind my eyes every time I closed them. People came to visit me, expecting to see a man recovering from a tragedy. Instead, they found a man who had been set on fire with a hope that didn't make sense to them. I told them of the sifting, the stillness, and the mended hearts. I told them that the things they were worried about, the news, the money, the tensions in the city, were all like smoke compared to the weight of the glory I had seen. This experience was not given to me so that I could return to my old life as a rabbi of scrolls and rituals. It was given to me to transform the way we see our very existence. For 62 years, I thought I was serving God by following the rules, but in those 18 minutes, I realized that God was not looking for a servant of the law. He was looking for a son of the heart. The transformative value of this experience is not in the prediction of events, but in the realization that our lives are being weighed by a different scale than we imagine. We are so busy building things that will burn while ignoring the light within us that was meant to shine forever. Every day, I have walked the streets of Jerusalem with a sense of urgency. I see the golden threads Yeshua showed me. I see the people whose lamps are running dry and those whose names are beginning to glow. I realize now that my death was the only way I could truly learn how to live. We are living in a moment where the veil between the physical and the spiritual is thinner than it has ever been in human history. The 18 minutes were not a gap in my life. They were the revelation of what life actually is. It is a connection to the Messiah that transcends time and space. The world thinks it is progressing, but it is only running faster toward a cliff. I am the only bridge. I am the only way across. This reality means that every choice we make, every word we speak, and every secret thought of our hearts is currently being sifted by the wind of truth. We must move beyond the pious outward show and find the raw, honest connection with the living God. This is the only thing that will survive the coming silence. My experience is a loud cry in the middle of a sleeping world. Wake up. The rituals will not save you. The buildings will not protect you. Only the one who mends the broken vessel can carry you through the storm. The world thinks it is progressing, but it is only running faster toward a cliff. I am the only bridge. I am the only way across. He is stripping away the layers of pretense from the leaders and the common man alike. You will see those who claim to speak for God be revealed as wolves, and those who were silenced will finally find their voice. This is the year of the open mouth and the naked heart. Most people are distracted by the politics and the daily struggle, unaware that the spiritual tectonic plates are shifting beneath them. They think they have years, but the Messiah showed me that the season of the harvest is here. The question is not whether you believe a rabbi had a vision. The question is whether you can feel the wind. The king is standing at the door. Are you ready to let him in? I want to stay with one thing before I let this go. Shmuel gave 62 years to the scrolls, and he says that when he saw the face at the stream, his knees went out from under him. Not from fear, but from recognition. That is the word he reached for, recognition. He says he knew Yeshua the way he knows his own home. And that is the question nearly every one of these accounts seems to circle back to. Whoever sends them in, how does a person recognize someone they have never seen? A rabbi, a nurse, a child? They come back saying they simply knew before anyone said a word. I cannot explain how a man knows a face he has never looked at. That is the part I am still sitting with. So here is my honest ask. If something like what Shmuel lived through has happened to you, or if something in his story does not match your own at all, I would really like to hear it. That is how I find out whether what I am noticing holds up. Leave it in the comments. It honestly helps me think. And if you have ever known a face the way Shmuel says he knew Yeshua at that stream before a single name was spoken, tell me how you knew.